Welcome. Today I'm going to share with you some ideas on how computer science education and indirectly computer science departments can begin to address the inequities in society that we have recently been observing. Let's jump right in. Why are we talking about this and why now? The social context of it is quite interesting. The global pandemic has had a very large impact on all of us, but it has a negative impact on communities of color, and it has demonstrated the inequities that already existed in society. That was sort of coupled coincidentally by the social protests that erupted after the killing of George Floyd that became more evident than black community in particular were being disproportionately impacted by police. And the Black Lives Matter had been bringing this to our attention for a while, but for some reason this time around, this became a little bit more obvious. And that is coupled when it comes to computing, that for years we've been talking about broadening participation in computing, but it's starting to sink in that we need to talk about more than just broadening participation. So, what can we do? And more specifically, what can computer science education do? What can the departments in academia do to help address some of these issues? I'm going to talk about a couple of things and then I'll provide some suggestions. But first, I want to talk about a myth that exists of equality versus equity. People confuse the two. People think that equality is the important metric for us to be fair to everybody. And the reality is that that is not. I think sometimes in the name of equality, we promote the inequities that existed before students came into our classroom, for example, and we just pass them on forward to the next level. Equality means everybody has the same set of activities and tools to work with, but that's not equitable. So if students come to our classroom with some baggage, basically from previous experiences, and we want them to succeed, we have to provide them with the tools to succeed with where they are. We have to take them forward. And the example of the picture here, which is a common picture that you see on the web, basically says that for equity to happen, all participants have to be able to experience life the same way. And for that, different participants requires different tools and techniques and support and resources. And that's where I think sometimes we get too strict on the equality. Well, I have to give everybody the same chance, but that chance leaves behind the one that didn't have the right opportunities before they came to us. So I would like to say that equity is essential if you're interested in having diversity be flourish. Um, does diversity matter then? And the answer is that there's a lot of research that is starting to come out and has been coming out in the last 10 years or so that shows that diversity matters. Diversity does make a difference. We're starting to see that having female representation at the top of a company has bottom line impact on the organization. We're starting to see companies that have higher diversity in their employees might have more clients. We're starting to see that mock juries that are heterogeneous, meaning there's more racial diversity in the jury panel, make better decisions. They discuss more facts, they deliberate longer, and as a result, reach a better decision. This is in mock juries, but it still probably applies to real juries. We're starting to see evidence that research evidence that shows that there's more creativity in teams that have more diversity. So overall, diversity does matter. It is actually something that will produce a better outcome. I'll give you one more example on that, and it's the Nature and Scientific American special issue that came out in 2014, 6 years ago now. They talk about 51% of the science and engineering workforce in the United States being white and male. And that's not bad unto itself, but it lacks a level of diversity. And they talk about, in particular, about informational diversity. Informational diversity is that people come into a decision or a work group with different information, opinions, perspectives, and that is a good thing. That's like the mock jury example that I provided, where now you're going to have different people having different perspectives, and those perspectives all contribute something to the bigger decision or the bigger design of a product or the bigger research contribution. So diversity is not just a cause about championing the minorities or the underrepresented. Diversity is a cause that provides benefits to everybody, to the majority too. And if we really want to be innovative, if we really want to be creative, if we really want to grow and address the bigger problems in society, we need all those different points of view. And that is the goal of diversity. And to reach diversity, we need to provide an equitable work environment or academic environment for all the participants. So let's talk about 4 areas where I think computer science education can improve or do things differently to address inequities. And I will mention them briefly here, but then I'll go into details for each in the subsequent slides. The first one is providing more support and opportunity to students who are underrepresented in computing. The students that come into our classrooms and are not the typical students in terms of the type of representation that we have in our programs often feel as an outsider, and we need to provide extra support for them. Encourage faculty to become active participants in addressing inequity and diversity activities. Needless to say, without faculty, nothing happens, so we need to get them engaged. We need to update the computing curriculum to be more inclusive and culturally responsive, and I'll mention a little bit about that later on. And finally, we need to change our department infrastructures. Diversity and equity is not something that is managed by itself. It's not a problem that disappears. It's not a solution that is obtained and then we're done. It is something that's continuous, and we need to manage it just like we manage other parts of our department. Let me go into each one of them in detail. So students that come from underserved communities, the research shows that they have fewer networking opportunities, they have fewer sponsors or mentors, fewer role models, and they often lack the confidence to seek out help, not because they're shy, but because they are used to living in a system that pushes them away or tells them they're out of line or tells them that that's not for them. So we need to provide an environment that allows them to succeed. We need to provide an environment that pulls them into the work environment and gives them the opportunities that they need so that they have an equitable learning environment and be able to prosper. So I strongly suggest you create student organizations that support underrepresented students. I think you should have organizations that address their needs. We've done this for women. Almost every department has a Women in Computing, an ACMW chapter, but we don't have that for Blacks, we don't have that for Latinos, we don't have that for students with disabilities. I think we need to find a way to bring those students in and provide them the social support that is needed to succeed in the department. We should include student representation in departmental committees. A lot of people do that, but often you just pick the person you know down the hallway. Bring in those voices that are normally not heard. Again, you might lead to better decisions the more different opinions you have in the room. And I think bringing in students that are from groups that are traditionally not there will provide you that different point of view. Finally, send students to Tapia, Grace Hopper, SAGNAS, and a lot of these other conferences that focus on mentoring and networking. Again, students from groups that are underserved have fewer of those opportunities provided to them. You want to encourage faculty to get involved. You want to get faculty to become active participants in these initiatives. And that's a challenge. A lot of faculty in general want to participate and want to do it. They're behind the idea of making things more equitable, but they don't know how to do it. And if you're in a field like ours in computer science, where we're more focused on the technical than the social, you might not really have people feeling comfortable doing this. So make it easy. Provide incentives for them to do it. Provide an easy to-do list. In my former department, we had literally a menu of activities. And the department head told the faculty, you have to participate in one diversity activity a year. Pick them from this menu or something else. And they went from attending a lunch for women at the dorm for women in engineering to being chair of a national conference on diversity initiatives, the whole range. And the annual evaluation done by the department head mentioned what activity they participated and commended them for participating. And it was sort of an easy way to say, oh, I can participate on that. I don't have to think if that's the right thing or not. It's already been given to me as a choice. And it didn't take long for everybody to take up participation, and almost every faculty participated in one kind of activity or another. Now, the challenge here is that we have to balance this set of activities, because more often than not, diversity activities land on the lap of African Americans and Latinos and professors that are underrepresented in your department. And the diversity activities should not be up to them, should be up to everybody. So you have to make sure that that level of activities count as professional service. And if somebody is being chair of a conference, then for crying out loud, don't give them a whole lot more, because they're already doing a lot of work. Just like it would have been if they were chair of a technical conference. Finally, provide training against implicit bias, recognizing stereotype threat, microaggressions. I think those type of trainings exist. They're well defined, they're well run. Most campuses have them. Make it part of your faculty service to participate in one of these every time, because I think that will help change the climate in your department. Update your curriculum. Your curriculum should be inclusive and culturally sensitive. For computing, we often think, well, what does that mean? I'm just talking about an algorithm. How can the algorithm become culturally responsive, or how could it be inclusive? Well, for one thing, you can look at your language that you use in your course descriptions. Make sure it's gender neutral, make sure it doesn't have culturally insensitive phrases. And there's plenty of them. There's a list of examples on the web. Update the examples you use in classes to be more culturally responsive. The whole idea of culturally responsive pedagogy is a real thing. There are guidelines, there are papers written on it. Look into it and find out ways that you can make your curriculum better. Even if you're teaching something like programming languages or theory of computation, you could probably make your course a little bit better by looking at examples and language that you use in your classroom. Finally, groups that are underrepresented in computing are attracted to social applications of computing. So you might want to highlight the social applications, the applications that have an impact in society, rather than just being computationally efficient for the sake of computational efficient. That those social applications are applications that attract women and minorities, and you want to make them feel like they're part of the room. You want to evolve the departmental infrastructure. Diversity, equity, inclusion, justice in your department is not something that is a problem to be solved by tomorrow. It's not something that requires just let's name a task force and make a list of things that we need to do and we're done. It is actually something that requires day-to-day management, just like you manage your budget, just like you manage your curriculum, just like you manage personnel in the department. And that means that you need to have somebody in charge of it. You need to have a committee that manages. You need to have personnel that respond to situations of crisis. If you have assistant chairs that have a list of responsibilities, diversity should be one of them to assign to one of your assistant chairs. This is something that needs to be done as a regular thing, just like your budget, personnel, curriculum, physical plans, and any of those. So don't go into it thinking, oh, the moment we have 50% of females in the degree, we're done. No, you're going to have to continue doing that forever, because you want to have an equitable environment, and having an equitable environment requires effort to make it be that way. In closing, I want to say that the role of computing has a big part to play in making society more equitable. Computing careers are definite enablers for social mobility. We have very high salaries and very high opportunities that allow people to increase their standard of living. We also drive the economy. It's a portion of the economy is driven by computational technology, and many industries are becoming computationally enabled industries. So we have a role to play in making society more equitable. But we have to be active participants in addressing these inequities. We can't just say, well, we built this tool for you, it's not my problem, I'm going to step back. We have to use computing as a tool to move society to become more equitable. And with that, I finish and I'll open up for questions. Thank you.